By the time I was like 14, 15, I was asking some very big questions that not many teenagers tend to ask or think about. I was contemplating things like, what is reality? What is my purpose? What happens if I die? Is there multiple layers to this reality? Is there a multiverse out there? What are other ancient civilizations out there? And I would journal about things like that. If you ask my personal development teacher in high school, she will tell you that I was the odd kid in her class who journaled every week about those kinds of things. There are a few key decisions we make in our lives that go on to completely alter our paths and transform us into people we never thought we'd become. For me, I had to make a few of those key decisions to turn my life around. But it started with me deciding that I wanted to get better. That's the first key decision I had to make in my life back then. And that's also going to be the first key decision you're going to have to make if you're serious about turning your life around. But in order for you to get to that first decision, to decide that I want to get better, in order for you to wake up one day and tell yourself that this is the day that everything changes, this is the day that I stop complaining, I stop whining about my life and my past and all the circumstances surrounding me that I completely hate, you need to first be aware of where you are in life. Metacognition, which describes your ability to become conscious of your life and the things happening to you, both internally and externally, is key in deciding if you need to make some big changes in your life to get better. Because without an awareness of where you are, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to decide to change, because you won't have that sense of urgency and that sense of deep desire to change where you are. Even if your days are filled with struggle, and even if you look at other people out there and you want what they have, if you're not aware of where you are and how bad the place you're in and the conditions you're surrounded by, it's not going to force you to change things. So you'll just go on accepting the way things are and never waking up having this feeling in you that I don't care what I'm going to do, but I'm determined to change things for myself. So do an assessment of your life. It doesn't have to be a long assessment. It's simply you just reviewing everything that you're faced with, the conditions around you, the relationships that you're maintaining, how difficult circumstances are for you, and to just be aware of what's going on in your life at the time. And the harder things are for you, the better it is for you. Why do I say that? Well, difficult situations will put your back against the wall where you have nowhere else to escape, and the only way to do it is to just decide to get better. So for me, at that time, I was about 14, turning 15, and I told myself that if I don't make a decision to get better now, if I continue to do the same things I've done for the last few years, if I continue to maintain the same kind of relationships I've maintained for the past few years, if I continue to give my time and my energy and my attention and my emotions to the same kinds of things, nothing is going to change for me. And within a few years' time, I'm likely going to fail high school and definitely end up on the streets. The second key decision I made was to completely isolate myself from everyone. And I mean complete isolation. You could say I took it to the extreme. So let me paint a picture of what isolation was like for me between the ages of 14 and 15. So this was in 2013. So I was still 14 and I was going to turn 15 at the end of July. What I pretty much did was, for 9 months in 2013, I vividly remember this like it was yesterday. From January of 2013 to September of 2013, I never stepped one foot out of my yacht. Majority of the time, I would say 85 to 90% of the time, I was locked up, completely isolated in my room. And I was so isolated that my father had to cut an extra key for my room so that he could literally come and open my door. And it's amazing all the benefits you get from isolating yourself from the world and all of its distractions. Isolation really gives you a lot of time and space and energy for more important things in your life to grow. And this leads me to the third decision I made. I listed down all my distractions at that time. Some of the distractions that I listed included social media, included unnecessary friends and communication with them and hanging around with them all the time, alcohol, partying, smoking, sex and relationships. So I listed those distractions down, and I went beyond just listing them down. I contemplated why they were distractions, because I wanted to understand, if I continue doing those things, where am I going to end up in a few years' time? That was a great exercise I did, because once I understood why they were distractions, it was an immediate decision for me. I immediately decided, no, I'm not getting into those distractions, because I do not want to have a life like this. So the subsequent decisions I made as a result of me listing down all those distractions became easier, and they were mostly based on me understanding what my distractions were at the time and making the decision to stay away from them completely. After I did that exercise, automatically it led to the next two decisions I would make. The next decision was complete isolation from my old friends and the people that I was hanging around with and the people I was giving my time and energy and attention to. I had to get away from all of that if I wanted to get better and if I wanted to focus on developing myself. This was an important decision I had to make. So this was essentially me dumping my old friends. And I mean, that's a harsh word to use probably, but I had to make a decision to just stop all communication, all interaction with my old friends because I was hanging around with the wrong kind of crowd. I mean, they're not bad people by any means, but if I wanted a different path, then they weren't the people that I needed to hang around with. If I had, then I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And surprisingly, it wasn't hard for me to make, even though it might be for a lot of you, and even though it might seem like a hard decision because you're so used to hanging around with those kinds of people. In fact, you've maybe had some really good memories with them. You've built a close rapport with them over the years that it might be difficult to let go. But for me, I didn't find it that difficult to lose those connections because I understood that they weren't good for me. And once I understood that, it wasn't hard to let go. I just knew that I can't keep hanging around the same kinds of people. I'm only robbing myself of the opportunity to have a space where I can grow and develop myself into a better person. In fact, I pretty much didn't have a life, to be honest. And I didn't have a problem with that at all. I mean, once you get to a place where you're comfortable with being alone just by yourself, oh my God, that's an amazing place to be in. And the sad truth I see today is that not many young people, not many teenagers, not many people in their 20s, even people in their 30s and 40s, have a very difficult time being okay with being alone. I mean, why is that such a bizarre thought? Why is that such an uncommon thing in society? So I became very comfortable being alone, being by myself. And I found comfort in other things that I wouldn't have found comfort in if I was around people, if I was around my friends then. And by letting go of all of those old connections, old relationships, I was now free to then focus on myself. I was no longer distracted by what was out there and what they were doing and what I needed to do to fit in. Now my mind was more focused on, this is about me. This is about getting better. This is about healing. This is about transforming myself. This is about developing myself and growing myself to be a better person because I want this. I want this bad enough that I'm willing to do anything. I'm willing to make decisions like that where I completely isolate myself, where I completely let go of my old friends and old connections. So here's a challenge for you and here's my question for you. Who are you hanging around with? There's a common saying that you are the byproduct of your 5 closest friends, of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And so I don't need to know you to tell you that if you're hanging around foolish people, if you're hanging around people who never take life seriously, who never take their personal growth and development seriously, who are not serious about growing themselves and developing their minds, then you may not be like them yet, but pretty soon, and it'll happen very quickly, you will end up just like them. And the saying, show me your 5 friends and I'll show you a future, is very true. You know, birds of a feather flock together, meaning people who think alike tend to love to hang around with each other. That's why you'll never see a successful person out on the street hanging around with idiots. All I'm saying is that think about the people that you're hanging around with. If they're not in alignment with the kind of person you want to be, you need to ditch them. And I'm sorry if it sounds harsh, but that's the hard truth you need to hear. You know, I'm in my 20s, but I don't have friends who are in my 20s simply because we don't exist at the same wavelength. In fact, I find it more comfortable and I find that I have a lot of commonality with people who are 2 to 3 times my age. So all my friends, which I can count with 5 fingers, I have a very small circle of friends. They're all either in their late 30s or early 40s. But I think at that kind of level, that's why I'm attracted to people like that. And so I may be in my 20s, but psychologically I'm in my 40s. So I often joke that if I end up marrying a guy who's in his 40s, don't be surprised, because I'll likely be more attracted to a more matured man than a boy in his 20s. Be careful with the people you surround yourself with, because it can make or break your future and the person you end up becoming. The next logical decision I made was I decided to quit social media. For a lot of you young people, you're just wasting your time on social media. Most of you literally spend your entire days and every free time you have on social media to do absolutely nothing. I mean, who cares if you just came out of the bathroom and dyed your hair pink? No one gives a shit about that, but no, people have to share it. They're so consumed by this thing called social media, and it blows my mind how they're allowing a technology like social media to completely consume their lives, and they've pretty much given their free will to some app. Like, you've got all this intellectual power and capacity in your mind, but you reduce it to nonsense. It shocks me how people think like that. Back in 2014, the social media I was on was Facebook, and if you go and if you search my Facebook account, you will see some pictures of my old stuff. You will see the kind of comments I made. You would see my language, the things I love talking talking about, the people that I was communicating with, and you would know that that Crystal was a totally different person. And I had to get past that old identity, because when I look back at it, I cringe when I see the things I was talking about, when I see the people I was hanging around with, when I see the things I was attracted to. I'm so glad I made the decision to change my life and to get to where I am today, because my life is much more fulfilling. I mean, the things I've been able to accomplish, these are things people dream of, but I've been able to manifest such a reality. It's an incredible place to be in. And so for a lot of you just have your attention in the wrong places. And this is why you're stuck in life. But until you learn to prioritize what is important in your life, and it starts with prioritizing yourself. What am I doing to help myself? Ask yourself those questions. What am I doing to get better? How am I developing myself? But the sad thing is, unfortunately, a lot of you are not going to be asking those questions, because it's almost like you're in this cryogenic state. You're just programmed by society that you just live out your days a mere program, someone who's not conscious. So quit social media and stop giving your precious time and energy to Mark Zuckerberg and to TikTok and to WhatsApp. Have a purpose for why you're on social media. Moving on from there, the sixth decision I made was to invest in my personal education. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I did was I saved up money. I bought a bookshelf. I think it was about $150. And then I'd say maybe 2 times in a month, depending on how often I needed new books to read, I would go and I would visit a friend of my father's. His name is Paul. He sells secondhand books from Australia, and he's done that for a long time. I remember when I was a kid and when my father was working at Post P&G, Paul usually sells his secondhand books just outside of Post P&G Broco. And so my father built a good relationship with him and always bought books, because my father is a great lover of books. He's a bookworm, and so I naturally also came around to like reading books. So I would save up money, and then most weeks I would go and visit Paul to buy new secondhand books from him. And there are some great books that I got for free, but the kind of books he sold were books that helped to begin to develop my mind and my character and my discipline and my personality. And it was through the books that I bought from Paul that I was able to read books on leadership and management by authors like John C. Maxwell and Peter F. Drucker. My father also got a lot of books on economics, world business, entrepreneurship. But I'd say the most critical books that really had a significant impact in my life at the time were books on spiritual development. And interestingly enough, it was during that period that I came to discover things like meditation and consciousness and mindfulness and the power of living in the now or living in the moment. So I began to get exposed to people through their books like Eckhart Tolle, one of my most amazing spiritual mentors, the late Dr. Wayne Dyer. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2016. I mean, he was probably the single most person that was pivotal to my transformation, honestly. And it saddens me that I never got to meet him. I also came across books like The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav. I came to learn about The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, and I watched The Secret documentary, and that also was part and parcel of me getting to earning over $100,000 by the age of 18. So investing in my personal education mostly involved me reading a lot, and not just reading, but whenever I found concepts that were so interesting to me, I took the time to meditate on them. I took the time to contemplate them, which leads me to the 7th decision I made, which was to learn to develop my spiritual aspect. I think a lot of us are stuck in a body we think is who we truly are, when the fact is that this body is only a vessel. It's only the shell. But who's looking out through your eyes? Who's experiencing this reality? Who's experiencing this world? It's your spirit. It's that ghost in the shell. And so I wanted to connect more with my spirit. I wanted to get to know it more, because the more I read about spiritual development, the more I came to begin to develop this understanding and realization that I am a spiritual being having a human experience. It's not the other way around. And until I learn to live from that true place of where my spirit and my essence is, everything external that I want to do and achieve in this physical world will naturally follow, because I've taken care of what's inside here. And as a result of that, I've established the right kind of foundational thinking that will help to attract the kind of life I want externally. So I began to learn skills like meditation and mindfulness. I started learning how to contemplate deep things. And so by the time I was like 14, 15, I was asking some very big questions. I was contemplating things like, what is reality? What is my purpose? What happens if I die? Is there multiple layers to this reality? Is there a multiverse out there? What are other ancient civilizations out there? And I would journal about things like that. If you ask my personal development teacher in high school, she will tell you that I was the odd kid in her class who journaled every week about those kinds of things. And so for parents, if you have kids who are thinking like that at such a young age, it's a clear sign that their mind is at a different level and that they're developing in a very different trajectory and direction than many kids do. And it's important that you pay attention to that and help to nurture it. Also, having someone like my father who understood the importance of operating at such a level and developing your mind and your spirit, it was a lot easier for me because I could connect with my father in those kinds of ways, and I could have deep conversations with him. I remember it was very typical for us to have dinner at 9 p.m. and then talk until 2 a.m. in the morning. And we would talk about reality, we would talk about our life here on this planet, we would talk about the purpose of experiences, and my father would describe it as kind of spiritual deposits you're making into your spiritual bank account. So the greater your experiences and the more difficult they are, and the more you're able to overcome those difficult circumstances, the more you're depositing into your spiritual bank, which will contribute to your spiritual evolution in the long run. So it helped in a lot of ways that I had someone like my father who I could really open up and talk about a lot of those things, because he was able to further expand my mind. I had someone where I could question a lot of the things I was learning, and importantly, he was also able to go out there, go out of his own way and do research and find materials and resources out there that he knew I needed to be able to supplement my knowledge and understanding of a lot of the things I was learning at the time. And for a lot of parents, they don't tend to do that. Parenting is a very important role that many parents don't take seriously, and part of it requires work, just as with any other meaningful thing in life. Hey there, I just wanted to say I hope the video was helpful. If you stuck around to the end of this video, thank you so much. Please consider subscribing to the channel. It does help out the channel a lot. Don't forget to like and comment below, and do share the video with anyone in your network you think the video might be beneficial to. But until next time, thanks for the company.